What's going on, everybody? It's Jay here from Nerd Takes, and today I wanted to give you my take on Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. So, Netflix just released their newest movie, which is a fourth installment in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. And my initial thought when first hearing that they were even making this movie was, really? I mean, Beverly Hills Cop, the original, is a beloved movie by many, and it's one that I quite enjoy myself. But the sequel wasn't one that I thought lived up to the first, and if I'm being honest, I never even watched the third movie. But general consensus on it is that it wasn't very good and is probably the weakest of the bunch. So the idea of a fourth installment wasn't something I ever thought would really happen at this point, never mind that it would be one of any decent to good quality. And pairing that with the idea that it's been 30 years since the last film and 40 years since the first, it just really felt like the window had closed on any potential for a follow up entry to the franchise. But with the movie finally being released, I got a chance to actually watch it and see what exactly they were able to do with this fourth installment. And I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised with the results. I did enjoy the film. Now, that's not to say that this was some perfect movie by any means, because it's not. It has its flaws for sure. But I mean, so doesn't the original for that matter. It's not like these films were made to be some kind of masterpieces in cinema history, but for what they are, which is a fun action comedy with a bit of buddy cop feel to them, the original fit that genre really well, and so does this one. To start with the things that I liked about this, I have to start with Eddie Murphy himself. I thought this was a really good return to one of his classic iconic characters in Axel Foley, and in general, one of his better roles that he's had in this later stage of his career. He was as charismatic and funny as he's been in the past. His acting as a whole was pretty good and just seemed like he really enjoyed being back in the character of Axel Foley, which added to the level of fun you were able to have as a viewer of this movie. The action in this was fun to watch. It was definitely a bit over the top, just like it was in the original, but in a good way that added to the entertainment of the film. There's definitely a bit of plot armor and reliance on some coincidence that isn't the tightest of writing script wise, but the movie itself isn't one that tries to take itself too seriously, so it works, much like it did in the original, where there's all these over the top action scenes and fights with weapons where Axel and his partners all seem to somehow make it out unscathed, a bit unrealistically, if I'm being honest. But again, in this style of action comedy, it fits with what they were going for and makes for some fun to watch scenes. I also really enjoyed the feel of this film. And what I mean by that is in certain ways that they filmed scenes and ways they applied music from the soundtrack to those scenes, there was a real 80s film style feel to this one, which was a really nice throwback, especially given the era of the original films. You notice it right from the opening sequence of the movie, and then throughout it in different parts, you pick up on that sense some more, which was just a cool way to go about making a fourth installment of a franchise that began way back in the 80s. Now, other parts of the film do feel like they're done in a more modern style, which is also pretty well done, and the blend of the two fit together nicely. The story itself is pretty straightforward in terms of a Beverly Hills Cop type of plot. It wasn't very surprising or particularly clever by any means, but it was a solid detective style story for an action comedy. And then there were a few nostalgia based things that I did enjoy. For instance, the return of some actors from the original films and the use of the main theme from the originals as well. Seeing the actors reprise their roles was honestly just a fun little throwback, and generally speaking, I thought they all did pretty well in bringing back these characters. I had no complaints there. And I mean, what's Beverly Hills Cop without that iconic theme music? They applied it to scenes just as well as they did in the original, and they even added some interesting new takes on it in different scenes that I thought were also done pretty well. Now, in terms of some of the flaws I noticed in this film, there definitely are a few. It's not a perfectly written story by any means. As I mentioned earlier, there's definitely some plot armor and a reliance on convenience that can be a bit silly at times, as well as a few bits of logic, or rather lack thereof, that have that same kind of silly vibe to them, but overall, they don't deter from the fun you have watching the movie. I also thought that Taylor Page, the actress who plays Axel's daughter, was a bit wooden in performance overall, but she did have some moments where she showed some pretty good acting ability. I actually enjoyed her character's role in the general story of the relationship between her and her father and the journey that that relationship goes on throughout the story. But I do have to be honest, and in contrast to such a charismatic character like Axel and actor like Eddie Murphy, her performance did come off a bit wooden. Overall, I have to say that I enjoyed watching this movie. It's not perfect and it's not great, but it is fun. And ultimately, I think that's all it really wanted to be: a fun action comedy that brings people back to a franchise that hasn't been relevant for a very long time, and to do so in a way that maybe opens the door for making another one in the future. In a time when Hollywood is constantly trying to take old franchises and bring them back to try and squeeze a little bit more money out of something that people recognize from the past, or even worse, using them to try to push a personal agenda in a way that turns off fans of the original IP that they may be using, this was a solid change of pace where it seems like they wanted to actually make something that paid respect to what came before it and give fans something that they could have fun watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again with another review soon.